What is it? Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So most of you might know this by now, but we had the baby. I posted my labor and delivery vlog, and you guys, thank you so much for all the love and just, I don't know, just sweet words from everybody that took the time to watch and like and comment. I loved how that video turned out. It's like a bittersweet one for sure, but yeah, I don't know, I'm really happy that we have that footage to look back on. Today I wanted to share our baby's birth story in a little bit more detail than what you guys get in that vlog. So I want to officially introduce you guys to my daughter, our daughter, Scotty Grace. We had a little girl. She is just the cutest, sweetest little thing. She's a little fussy right now, which is why she's so red. But yes, we had a little girl. As you guys know, probably, maybe not, I don't know. If you're new here, maybe you don't know, but we kept the gender a surprise. So my entire pregnancy, I made it to 40 weeks, 6 days. So just before hitting 41 weeks pregnant, she arrived. And that entire time, we didn't know the gender. We kept the gender a surprise. So when she was born, my husband is actually the one who reveals the gender. And it was just the sweetest moment. I was in such shock and disbelief. I was very convinced this whole pregnancy that I was having another boy. So yeah, my entire pregnancy, I was very convinced it was gonna be another boy. So you hear the genuine just shock and excitement in my husband's voice, because he was kind of like, well, if you think it's a boy, it's probably going to be a boy. But he really thought we were going to have, let me fix this here. I'm sorry about the noise in the background. There's like a major road that runs behind my house, and it gets really loud sometimes. Oh, Scotty girl passed out. She's so cute. She's so stinking cute. I'm gonna take a picture of her so you guys can see my view right now. She looks so funny. She's cute. Anywho, but yeah, I wanted to share my birth story with you guys, formally introduce you to our daughter, and yeah, so if you're interested in hearing how little Gracie girl made it into the world, then keep watching. Okay, so I'm really gonna try hard to not ramble and get straight to the points of this story. I want to preface this by saying that my labor with Scotty, her birth story, all of it is so different than how things went with Archie. All that to say, do not take my experience as the, you know, the way your experience is gonna go. If you're a mom, if you're expecting your child, your first child, or whatever the case may be, this is not meant to scare anybody. Pregnancy and childbirth is a beautiful thing. It is a hard thing, and it is a painful thing. But when I tell you it is worth it, it is 1000% worth it. I would do it again. So I just want to preface by saying, like, just because this was my experience, it literally does not mean that you will have a similar experience or anything close to what I've experienced, because Scotty's birth was way different than Archie's birth. So just keep that in mind when you're watching this. If you're, you know, gonna have a baby yourself, like, I'm not trying to scare anybody here. I'm just sharing my genuine, authentic experience and, you know, how things went down. All right, so let's jump into it. All right, so I was 40 weeks, 5 days pregnant on Sunday, January 1st. And New Year's came and went, and I was just like feeling a little bit bummed that, you know, I was getting ready to jump into my 41st week of pregnancy and still nothing was really happening. I had a few practice contractions like within week 39 and 40, but nothing that lasted very long, nothing that was too extremely painful. I had lost my mucus plug about a week before this, before the 1st of January, maybe like 4, 5, 6 days before the 1st of January, I had lost part of my mucus plug. So I don't know, I was just on edge. I was like waiting for something to happen. I posted a picture. I had been quiet off stories for the entire day because I didn't feel well. I actually had a pretty bad headache and like a little bit of body aches and a little bit of a scratchy throat, but nothing crazy. Like I didn't feel horribly sick or anything like that, but I felt like my body really needed rest. So I was off social media the entire day. I ended up taking a pretty long nap on the 1st, and that night I posted a picture of my belly saying, in case y'all were wondering, we're still here. Because, you know, people kind of like make the assumption of like if I'm not active on social media, because I typically am on stories, posting and stuff like that throughout the day. So I figured that if I don't post, people are probably going to make the assumption that I went into labor. So just to be funny, I posted a picture of my baby bump one last time, and I was like, I'm still here, y'all. Well, joke's on me, because that was posted around like 9 p.m. Around 10:30 p.m. I'm laying in bed, I'm, you know, trying to go to sleep, and I'm having contractions. They're coming like every 20 minutes, but they're painful. Like they're very painful. Not as painful as they will get, but they were pretty, you know, strong and pretty often enough that it made me start tracking them. So I started tracking around 10:30. Around 11:30 they started to shorten up and come every like 10 to 12 minutes. And by 11:45 I called it. I told my husband, like, listen, I've been having contractions since 10:30. They're starting to get closer together and they're starting to get longer, like they're about a minute to 2 minutes each. We lived an hour and 15 minutes from the hospital, an hour 20 minutes from the hospital, so it's a bit of a drive. It was my second baby, so I had been told that labor can go a lot faster your second time around. That wasn't necessarily the case, let me tell you. That's why I'm saying, like, every labor is different. Take this story with a grain of salt. Do not think this is how your story is going to be, because like the most unpredictable thing you will ever probably go through in your whole entire life is pregnancy. And I was so humbled this pregnancy, because everything that I thought was going to happen, however I believe things were going to go down, the exact opposite is what actually ended up going down. So anywho, back to the story. 11:45 we call it. I'm like, we should go to the hospital. I have not experienced contractions this painful this entire pregnancy, this consistent this entire pregnancy. I've had contractions for, you know, going on an hour and a half almost at this point. So whatever, we get our things, get everything together. I tell my mom, like, hey, we're gonna head to the hospital. She's like so excited and so nervous, and low-key I'm so excited and so nervous, because I just had a feeling that even if this wasn't anything, the fact that we were driving all the way up to this hospital, which is an hour and some change away, I had a feeling I was going to come back with a baby. So like I felt like, okay, this is it. So okay, we drove to the hospital. My contractions started to get even closer together. I was contracting like every 6 to 8 minutes now. They were lasting a minute and some change. I was in a lot of pain. Things were revving up, I felt, right? So we make it to the hospital. It's like 1:45-ish when we get to the hospital. I get there, we check in, they do a COVID test. This is part of the hospital's protocol. They test everybody, every patient that comes in for COVID. They don't test my husband, they only test me. So I get my COVID test, they wheel me upstairs to the labor and delivery ward, and around 2:15-ish is when I get like put into a room. They tell me to undress, and they were gonna check me for dilation. So I'm in the middle of doing that. I'm in the bathroom getting ready to get into my gown, and a nurse comes in knocking, and she says, hey, you tested positive for COVID. Finish getting yourself dressed in your gown, but we're gonna have to move you to a different room, different area of the maternity area. And my heart just kind of dropped to my butt at that point, because I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean I tested positive for COVID? I've literally done nothing, gone nowhere, been around nobody. Like, how could this have happened? I don't feel sick. I mean, I had been feeling, you know, a little bit of body aches, a little bit of a scratchy throat the day before, but nothing that I felt like rest wasn't gonna fix. So I felt okay. Like, I mean, I was definitely tired, but I just attested that to the fact that I was almost 41 weeks pregnant, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, sweet girl. Uh-oh. She's been a little fussy this morning. I don't know what's wrong. Are you hot? It's a little warm today. It's a little warm today. I got her without any pants on. So, I don't know what to expect, and they don't tell me what I should expect is the worst part, right? So I do exactly as she says. We walk over to the first room in that hall, and she tells me that the doctor's gonna come in and check me. The resident doctor came in. She said I was about 4 centimeters dilated, which I thought was like great. I'm like, okay, that's it, we're gonna have this baby. Because in the States, when I arrived at the hospital after my water broke with my son, Archie, I was at 4 and I was immediately admitted. They're like, oh, you're 4 centimeters, you know, you're staying, whatever. Here, they don't admit you until you're 6 centimeters dilated. They don't consider you in active labor until you're at least 6 centimeters dilated. So she said, listen, what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep you here, but we're not admitting you as a patient just yet until you're about 6 centimeters dilated. At this point, it was like 3 something in the morning, 4 something in the morning at the latest. And I asked if my husband could come back, and she said, until you are a patient admitted into the hospital, then no, he cannot. He has to stay in the waiting room. We'll come check you again when the doctors like do their rotation at 8 in the morning. So it's like 3 in the morning at this point. I'm 4 centimeters, and they're not gonna come back until 8 in the morning to check me again for dilation so that I could be officially admitted into the hospital. I was contracting like crazy. Like, I mean, my contractions were anywhere between like 4 to 6 minutes apart. They were starting to last even over a minute. I was in a lot of pain. In my mind, even if I did not dilate another centimeter, I was not gonna go home, because I had already been contracting since 10:30 the night before on the 1st. Now it's the 2nd of January. It's about, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm still contracting. I'm not driving an hour and a half almost back to my house, because if something happens, I'm so far away from the hospital. Like, I was gonna stay, I was gonna have this baby that day, no matter what the verdict was. So I'm laboring by myself, unfortunately. It was kind of like really sad. I felt kind of sad, I felt kind of lonely, but at the same time, I just kept like, through my moments of like clarity when I wasn't having a contraction, I just kept praying, and I just kept asking God to like keep me motivated and keep me strong and help me through the next contraction. And you know, that I knew in my heart that everything was going to end up being okay. I was very unaware of what was going to happen. I was very unaware of the hospital's protocols, because no one made me aware of those things. But I just had faith that everything ultimately was going to be okay. So 8 o'clock rolls around. The resident doctors are like switching shifts. At 8:30, a different doctor comes in, checks me for dilation. I'm still at a 4. And I was so disappointed, because I was contracting so much. I'm like, there's no way I haven't dilated. Like, what do you mean I'm still at a 4? Like, this is not, no, I was not happy. But she's like, well, you know, what do you want to do? Like, you have options. So like, what do you want to do? I'm like, okay, well, like, what are my options? Because like, I'm not the doctor here. And I was like really concerned about my husband just being with me. Like, I wanted him with me. And thank God, like, I'm telling you, God is so faithful, and he is always like protecting me and watching over me and my family. Because there comes a point where if Angel hadn't been with me, because he does end up eventually coming back with me, you guys will have seen that in the labor and delivery vlog. things could have been pretty like scary and bad, but we'll get to that in a second. Anywho, she tells me we can induce you, like we can start the process of an induction. The very first step would be to give you a pill that will soften up your cervix. And because she when they checked, they were like, you know, your cervix is still a little bit hard, and you know, maybe that's what's causing the slowness and dilation and whatnot. So, you know, we can give you this pill. I forget the name of it. I'll like put the name of the pill here somewhere. And they insert that vaginally, which I did not know. I thought I was going to drink a pill and then whatever, but no. And that'll soften up your cervix, and it'll start to like help, I don't know, get you dilated essentially. And I was like, okay, at that point, if I've decided to get induced, am I admitted? Am I officially a patient admitted in your hospital? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so then my husband can come back here then, right? And she's like, yes, he can come back. So all that to say, I had literally been in that cold, lonely box of a hospital room for several hours, laboring on my own with no progress. I made the call and decided that I was going to go with this pill to help kind of push things along. The option of going home just didn't make any sense to me. I tested positive for strep B or something like that, group strep B. I forget exactly what it's called, but essentially it's a bacteria that, you know, a lot of women carry, and it does nothing to you, but it can be extremely harmful to the baby. You need to be on an IV, you know, within like 4 hours before the baby's born. You need to have an antibiotic going to protect the baby from harm as they're coming out of your like cervix and all that jazz. So for me, like, I was not going to go home because God forbid, you know, I end up having her on the way back at my house. Like, it was just too dangerous in my opinion to risk not being on that antibiotic that she needs in order to be safe coming out. So whatever, all that to say, I opted, for all the reasons I just explained, I opted to do the pill and move forward with an induction. The doctor, my doctor, officially comes into the room finally, and he's like, all right, what do you want to do? You want to have this baby today? I'm like, yeah, I do. And he's like, all right, let's get that pill going, blah, 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 blah. It's like around 9-ish, 9 and some change. I end up trying to fall asleep. I keep waking up because of the contractions. Around, I want to say it was around 10:30ish, my husband comes into the room. I was so happy and relieved to see him. I just felt like, I don't know, like I was going to be safe. I felt like I was going to be okay, for real this time. And around 11:30, I want to say, the doctor comes in and she checks me for dilation one more time. She's like, all right, before I insert the pill, I'm going to check you for dilation again. So last time they checked me, it was like around 8:30. Around 11 o'clock, they checked me for dilation. I'm at a 6. So I had progressed a little bit. I was super happy. So I was officially admitted because I was 6 centimeters dilated. But even more than that, I decided to get induced. So I was a patient of theirs now. So my husband was going to be there for the rest of the time, and we were going to have this baby today on the 2nd of January. So around between 11 and 11:30, I get the pill administered, and the contractions ramp up. I was contracting before that. I think I mentioned like every 4 to 6. At this point, I was like, you know, under 5 minutes contracting every 3 minutes, every 4 minutes, every 5 minutes, and they were lasting 2 minutes or longer. So I was in a lot of pain, and the doctor said, like, if at any point you feel a lot of pressure, you feel like you need to poop or anything like that, call us, because that could mean that, you know, you're ready. So what would happen next, and this is all they briefed me on, was that once I made it to 8 to 9 centimeters of dilation, they were going to move me into the laboring room. Now, because I tested positive for COVID, I couldn't labor in the same rooms that some of the other moms were laboring in. I actually got to labor in the VIP room, which is like a room that patients pay extra for to labor in. It's like this whole suite. It was nice. It was like considered an upgrade for people, but nobody ever pays for that. So they dubbed it the COVID, you know, labor room. So that was like probably the only nice thing about this entire experience. But I was literally in that room for like under 2 hours. So around 11:40, between 11:30 and 11:45, I start to feel that pressure that she's mentioning. And, you know, the contractions are just getting more and more unbearable. And I tell Angel, like, call the nurse. Like, I feel like I need to push. Like, I feel like I need to push. It's like something's happening. And he calls her in. They come, they check me, and they're like, you know, you're about an 8. You're just under 8 centimeters. But let's go ahead and move you into the laboring room now. Thank God they did that, because things really pop off at this point. So on my next break between my contractions, which that was a very different experience with Archie, I was contracting like back to back. There was no breaks. There was literally no breaks. I contracted the entire time up until I birthed him. With her, at least, I did get those like moments of like 1 to 2 minutes of a break before another contraction came up. So on one of those breaks, they had me get up and walk to the room where I was going to be having her, having the baby. And I get there, I lay on the bed, I'm like having contractions back to back at this point. I'm in a lot of pain. She is like, you know, telling me like, okay, you're at an 8, you know, it's gonna be probably a little bit more. But again, if you feel that pressure, you let us know. So she's in the room, she's like prepping things, kind of walking around. I'm contracting pretty bad. I'm telling Angel like to help me and rub my back, and I'm just like in and out of like feeling like I can speak and wanting to like cry. It was painful. Also, they don't offer any sort of pain medication. So just before you guys say like, oh, why didn't you get an epidural, or why didn't you, like, I don't know, get some morphine or something, they don't offer that in Puerto Rico. I mean, they offer it in some hospitals. I don't want to say, I'm not speaking for the entire island. The hospital that I was at did not offer that option. So yeah, it was gonna be, I was gonna have to like go at it raw no matter what. So the nurse, or I don't know what she was, she had to have been like a midwife or something, was like you know, kind of pacing around, getting things ready, unwrapping some like papers and like cleaning supplies and stuff. And then she steps out at around 1 o'clock. It's like 1:02. It had to have been, because this is where it all goes down. So she steps out, and I'm like chilling for like a quick second, and I get a contraction. And I'm like, oh my God, like this felt like the peak of a contraction. Like I was like, oh my God, something's happening. And no, Angel didn't record that. I edited a lot of the labor, or like a lot of the pushing out of my labor and delivery vlog, because like I'm screaming, girl. Like I am beside myself. I did not have that sort of reaction with Archie, but I think the reason why is because I was never once alone with laboring. Like there was always a labor and delivery nurse right at my bedside for the most part, for the greater part of my laboring, and especially right at the end. Like she was always there. They were amazing. That's one thing that I'm so sad about this experience, is like I didn't have that at all. My labor and delivery nurses in New Jersey were the best thing that happened to me that entire experience. I feel like I still remember a lot of their names, like Miss Hannah, Miss Toomey. There was a girl named like Chris, and then another one named Melissa, Rebecca. Like they were amazing. They're like little angels, I swear. That was not what I got out here, but nonetheless, the lady walks out. I'm getting like 2 minutes after she leaves the room, I'm getting like a really bad contraction, and I scream bloody murder. I'm like, something's happening. And Angel's like, what? I'm like, the baby, I think the baby's coming out. And he pulls the blanket, and he's like, oh my God. I saw his face, and I got scared, because like his reaction was just like, your water's just on the table, it broke. Oh my God, it broke. Oh my God, the baby. I was crowning, like I was literally crowning. No joke, she had checked me. I was 8 centimeters dilated. She walks out of the room, and in 2 minutes, I went straight to a 10. My water explodes. When I tell you that felt like a volcanic eruption came out of my vagina, like I am not kidding. Like it literally felt like boom, like a whole thing just exploded out of me, like my guts or something, but it was my water. And then I just immediately felt the urge to push. And when Angel looks, he confirmed my water came out, it exploded. I think it came out like complete, and then it popped. And then he saw the baby's head right there, like I was crowning. He's like, I can see the baby's head. He runs into the hallway and starts screaming like, the baby, I need help, I need help. Now, we were like behind a set of double doors, like the labor and delivery wing, you have to go through these double doors, walk into the wing, and then the desk is like right past the doors. So we're on the opposite side of the doors, and he's like screaming for help. And like, it took a few seconds, like I couldn't have been even more than a minute. A plethora of resident doctors came into the room, like running into the room. There was like a guy in glasses, a lady with glasses, the nurse that was there originally, another nurse, another doctor, so many people. And I'm just like screaming like, oh, take it out, please, like just screaming, crying. I listened back to the audio and I'm just like, oh my God. I was in so much pain, and it was very uncontrolled because, you know, one thing I can say in my experience with Archie is that I knew exactly when I needed to push, because one, I had a contraction, right? And my nurses would tell me like, okay, ready, go, 1, 2, 3, and they would count it down for me while I'm pushing. At this point, there's no counting down, right? Like, they're just like, push, 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 keep pushing, push, bear down, push, like you have to poop, like you have to poop. And I'm just like, ah! Like pushing. At one point, I like completely bear down, and just like, I needed the pain to stop so bad. Like, I felt like it was a lot of pain. That's all I'm gonna say. It was a lot of pain. I'm not trying to scare nobody. It was a lot of pain, but it was quick. Like, it was quick. Okay, so I'm pushing. I push for like maybe 2 minutes, if that, and I immediately feel relief. Like, the moment she comes out, I'm like, ugh, and you hear Angel say, babe, it's a girl, baby, it's a girl, it's a baby girl. And his voice is so excited. If you have not watched my labor and delivery vlog, that is the highlight of the vlog, is my husband's reaction to the gender. He really thought it was going to be a girl the entire time. I kept telling him, you are so wrong, it's not going to be a girl, it's going to be a boy. And he's just like, was so excited. He cried and everything. Like, he's not a crier. I've seen my husband cry. Like, we've been together for 14 years, married for 10, and I've seen him cry 3 times. When his grandmother died was one of them, and another time was when his daughter was born. And it was just amazing. I instantly felt relief from the pain. Not my experience with Archie. With Archie, I was still in a lot of pain. I was like, literally felt like my labor was continuing on, and they delivered the placenta, and I was still in pain. Like, while they were delivering it felt like I was delivering more babies. Like, I was like, oh my God, why am I still in pain? But with Scotty, the moment she was born, the pain subsided, and you know, they got my placenta out. Now, I did tear. I had a 2nd-degree tear, which is like, I'm still kind of confused about, because she wasn't huge. I mean, she was only, what was she, 7, 8, 5 ounces bigger than Archie was. I think it was that uncontrolled pushing, because like, one of the things that I was told with labor is that the reason they tell you to push on a contraction is so you won't tear. Like, your body is helping you push the baby out during that contraction, so use the contraction to your advantage and push during the contraction, and you won't tear. And that's why with Archie, I barely tore. I had like barely a 1st degree, like barely. With Scotty, I had a 2nd degree, and I think it was because of that trauma of like the explosion eruption, the crowning that just kind of like boom happened out of nowhere, like within like seconds. Like, I dilated to a 10 within seconds, and just like the uncontrolled push. Like, it was like, just push. There was no like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 break, 1, 2, 3, none of that. It was just like, go girl, get that baby out. And I think that's probably what caused me to tear the way I did. So yes, she was here. She arrived. My husband was so excited. I was so excited. She didn't even cry, barely. I was like kind of nervous because she wasn't crying. She's just like a super sweet, chill little girl. And you know, they take her, they clean her up a little bit, they do her little footprints, they measure her. She was born at 1:08 p.m. on January 2nd. She weighed 7 pounds 8 ounces and almost 19 inches long. She's like 18 and 7/8 inches long. So she's a little heavier, was a little heavier than her brother, but shorter than her brother. And yeah, she's just like this perfect little angel. And you know, after they cleaned her up, they stitched me up. It felt like an eternity for them to stitch me up. They did numb me because, like, come on, they're not, that would be barbaric. I'd be like, nah, just let my thing stay floppy, because I am not gonna go through that, like you sewing me up with no numbing. But no, they numbed me, sewed me up. And they put her back on my chest, and I got to do a little skin to skin, and that's when they told us that they were gonna take her away. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? I am confused. And they were like, okay, did nobody tell you what the protocol is because you tested positive for COVID? And I'm like, no, nobody told me anything about anything. I just know that I've tested positive, and that's why I've had, you know, I had to give birth in this specific room. But I don't understand, like, why do you have to take her away? And they're like, well, you have COVID, so you have to go downstairs into the COVID, like the COVID ward on the first floor, and your baby's gonna stay up here on the third floor in the nursery. And I'm like, well, do I get to see her? Like, how am I gonna nurse her? Like, I was just so confused. I had literally just pushed a whole human out of my vagina with no pain medication, with almost no help. Like, literally, if it was not for Angel being in the room to call the nurses, I would have literally gave birth with nobody in the room, because they were gone. They were like, oh, she's gonna be another while, she's only at an 8. Like, I went from an 8 to a 10 in literally 2 minutes. So if it wasn't because Angel was with me, like, I don't know, like, that was just like a scary thought to think that, I don't, like, how would I have done that? Like, I was in so much pain, I couldn't even, like, move my hand to press the button for the nurse. Like, I was just screaming, like, in pain and, like, confused, and I felt her head right there. Like, again, I needed that companionship from my husband, because I don't know, like, I'm very much disappointed and, like, appalled at the protocols at this hospital. I'm sure, you know, their labor and delivery area would have been maybe fine had I not tested positive, but the way they treat their patients, their moms that test positive for COVID, is just wild to me. And that's not how they do it at other hospitals here. Like, when I've talked to other people about my experience here, and other doctors even, they're like, we never do that. Like, at our hospital, the mom and the baby go to isolation together. I'm sorry that they took your baby away. I'm telling you, after I was, like, sewn up, cleaned up, and all the things, I probably had her for, like, less than 20 minutes before they took her away. She pooped on me. She pooped, like, all over me. She pooped so much when she first was born. Archie peed on me when he was born, but she was like, I gotta one-up my brother. And she took a massive dump, like, over and over again. She just kept pooping that marconium or whatever it's called, that, like, sticky black poop. But it was, like, my only souvenir of hers, which is so weird. But I was like, I didn't even want to clean it off. I was just like, whatever, just leave it there, leave it on my arm, I don't even care. We had just enough time to FaceTime our moms. So I FaceTimed my mom, my husband FaceTimed his mom, and we told them that we had a little girl. They were so excited, they were so happy, and we told them, we have to go, we have to go, they're gonna take the baby. We'll explain more later. And as soon as we hung up, Scotty was, like, gnawing at her hand, and the nurse, I was crying at that point, because I just like was like, what the heck am I gonna do for the next 2 days? Like, I just had this baby. I don't even know what she really looks like yet because she was just born. Like, why do you have to take her? Like, please just don't take her. Like, I felt so sad that I wasn't gonna have her. Like, how is she gonna eat? Like, how are we gonna bond? Like, how is she gonna know I'm her mom? Like, we barely got to do the skin to skin, and she was like, oh, latch her on real quick, look, she's like sucking on her fist, so see if she'll latch. And so I put her on my chest, and I have the one photo of her and I where she's latched, and that's it. Like, they let her stay on there for like less than 2 minutes, and they were like, you know, we're gonna leave. They were like, at first they were like, we're gonna leave and go have lunch, and then we'll come back, and then when we come back, like, that's when we have to take her. But 5 minutes after they said that, they came back in the room, and she was like, I'm sorry, the nursery wants her right now. The doctor said that I need to bring her. And she's like, try to latch her on. So I tried, and she latched on right away, and she was like, I'm sorry, I really have to take her now. And she took her, and Scotty started to cry right away. Like, she was just like hysterically crying and like that. I know, I was so sad, baby. I was so sad when they took you. Scotty started to cry right away, and the nurse brought her for a quick second. She's like, oh, don't cry, like, here's mama, and she put her like by my cheek, and like Scotty grabbed my cheek, and she stopped crying for like that split second that they put her on my face. And then it's okay, baby. And then they took her, and I heard her crying all the way until they closed the door of our room. And I was devastated. Like, I was just like sobbing. I didn't even want to think about what the next few days were gonna feel like and look like without our baby, because all I kept thinking of was how important that first night with Archie was for me at the hospital. Like, my labor with Archie was hard too, in different ways than this one was, but it was a lot quicker than this one was, I felt. And it was just a lot of commotion, and I didn't feel like I got to truly bond with him and like explore his features and his little hands and his nose and his toes, his dimples, his lashes. I didn't notice any of those things until that night. That first night with him was the night that I truly felt like I bonded with my baby, and I was looking forward to that with her, especially because like she was just such a surprise. Like, I really didn't expect it to be a her, and I don't know, I was just like so excited to get to know her and for her to get to know me and for us to love on each other. And I don't know, it was just really sad. But I would say within the half hour after they took her, or less than that, they got me ready to go downstairs. I used the bathroom. I think they had me like get up, walk to the bathroom and pee, and like they kind of cleaned me up a little bit down there and put me on a wheelchair, and immediately took me down to the COVID ward. And Angel was with me. He had all our stuff with him, and we walked down there together. And once we got to the COVID corner, it literally looked like an apocalypse. It looked like we were in 2020. They had like clear, like the white plastic tarp in the hallways, like blocking off certain corridors, and everything was white and sterile, and the lights were just so like, I don't know, like aggressive, and it just felt like you were in a movie, like a post zombie apocalyptic movie. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, I don't want to be here, but I'm so grateful that at least I get to have Angel with me. Like, at least me and Angel can grieve this together, because, you know, they took her away from him too. He wasn't allowed to stay with her. He wasn't allowed to see her or any of that, or hold her. Once they took her, she was going to be gone until we got discharged. And he could visit her through like a glass like window, and that's it. So we get to the COVID ward, and the nurse says like, okay, the husband will stay here and they're gonna brief you at this window of what the protocol is, what's all gonna happen over the next few days. While they brief him, I'm gonna take your wife to her room. So we're like, okay, cool, well, I'll see you in a second. He stayed back and they're talking to him and giving him whatever brief they need to give him. We get to the room. It's like a door. You go through a door and there's like a little like foyer vestibule, and then you go through another door, and then you are in this extremely cold, dark room. It's like literally the thermostat is set to 54 degrees in there and you can't change it. And I'm in like a hospital gown, like a short sleeve, open in the back, thin as paper hospital gown. I just gave birth, like no joke, less than an hour ago. And you know, she helps me get in the bed and she's like, all right, well, best of luck, I'm really sorry. And you know, the nurses in the COVID ward are the ones that are going to be taking care of you postpartum. Now, these are not postpartum nurses. These are not labor and delivery nurses. Like, the labor and delivery nurses have like specific training on how to deal and, you know, help moms and newborns. Like, not just anybody is a labor and delivery nurse. Like, you have to have like a special certification for that. These ladies down here are not that. They're just there to like make sure the COVID patient isn't dead, like they survived the night or something. Like, when I tell you I had like minimum, the bare minimum postpartum care, it was literally the bare minimum. Like, nobody came to check if I was bleeding out. They would just come in like every maybe 6 to 12 hours and say like, oh, are you okay? Like, make sure I was alive. The food was awful. Like, I'm like, how do you expect anybody to eat this? I swear prisoners had better food. I would insert pictures of the food, but like, honestly, for what? I'll just say that they literally plated me a yellow slice of cheese folded in half. Like sandwich cheese, like a cheese slice that you put on a hamburger. They put that in a little cup, folded in half. That was part of my meal, with like stale bread, and it was just not good. Anywho, rewind a quick second. I get into the room. They load me on the bed. She tells me, you know, bye, the ladies here are going to take care of you. The nurses here are going to take care of you. And I was like, where's my husband? And she's like, he can't come back here. I was like, what? And she said, and then the other nurse came in with my stuff, with our like everything we had packed in our hospital bag that I didn't even get to use because I didn't have my baby with me. I mean, I used a few things, but not much. This other nurse comes in with my things, and I'm like, where's my husband? And he says, oh, sorry, you can't have anybody back here because you're in isolation and you're not allowed to have visitors and no one's allowed in your room to stay. And I was like, I didn't even get to say goodbye to him. Like, I just had a baby like 2 hours ago, if that. And I thought that him and I would get to stay together, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. Like, you guys just held him up at the front window. Like, I was so sad. I like called him right away and I was crying, and I was like, I don't want to be here by myself. It's so cold. I'm like freezing. And he's like, you know, they pretty much told me that you have to stay there you have to stay there in isolation for 2 days because you tested positive for COVID. And from that moment on, every bit of information and direction and this and that changed. Like, every day there was like a new piece of information about their protocols and what Angel was allowed to do, what he wasn't allowed to do, and whether he needed a positive or a negative COVID test or not. Like, just stupidity. Like, the way they run their hospital is the dumbest thing I've ever even heard of. It made no sense. Every avenue of it made no sense. Angel was probably positive for COVID too. Like, if I had it, he had it. I mean, we lived together, sleep in the same bed, rode in the same car, labored in the room together. Like, you know, like, there's no way he didn't have it too. So the fact that he could come in and out of the hospital as he wanted to drop things off, like he was allowed to drop food off and the nurses would bring it to me, or like blankets, because I was literally dying. I felt like my chest was gonna cave in from shivering so hard. It was so cold, and I had clothes and stuff, but it was like pajamas and like loungy comfy stuff. It wasn't like warm things. Like, I had to have him bring me our thickest blanket, a beanie, a hoodie, thick like knee-high socks, like the nines, like everything, because I was dying. I felt like I wasn't sick from COVID, but I was about to be sick from hypothermia. Like, it was so cold, and I wasn't really eating great because like there was just nothing to eat. I'm not eating a slice of cheese. Anywho, this is a really long video, and I didn't mean for it to be long, but it was just, that's how it went down. And I don't know, I spent the next 2 days just praying and crying and sleeping and talking to my sisters, who were like a huge help, and just like, I don't know, so it was just so nice to like have them to vent to and talk to. And I FaceTimed my mom and Archie, and he was so confused, and he was like wanting me to come home and asking me like, am I okay? And yeah, I just spent a lot of alone time, and it felt a little like I was gonna go crazy for a second there, but I was just like, I knew like, you know, this is temporary. Like, I'm gonna see my daughter again, you know, in 2 days, in 1 day, in a few hours. Like, I was just counting it down. We are just so grateful, and we're so happy with this new season of life, and we're just excited to like get really settled in now officially, and start like really living this island life as a family of 4. So yeah, thank you guys so much for all the love and the well wishes that you guys have been sending my way on Instagram and here on YouTube. I'm so excited to continue sharing this journey with you guys and all that. Let me know in the comments below what kind of videos you guys would be interested in seeing. I have a few things in mind, and I've also filmed a clothing haul, a newborn baby girl clothing haul, so that'll be up soon too. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys again so much for watching, for liking, subscribing, commenting. I appreciate it so much. If you're new here, welcome. I'm excited to have you. Let me know what you guys want to see from me next. But I am going to clean up a little bit while she's asleep and calm, and I'll catch y'all on the next video. Bye.